Hey everyone, Professor Snart here. It's Friday, December, what is it, the 10th today? God. Every time, this happens to me every year. Before Thanksgiving, I think I have all of this time to Christmas shop and book flights and finish schoolwork and grade exams, and then it goes from being late November to mid-December on me somehow. Anyway, so I lose track of the dates very easily. But we come to the end of our course then, so our last due date has come and gone. So I've been reading through the final essays and providing some comments back, and also, of course, the grade, so you can look to see what your final grade is. But this is a good opportunity to really reflect on the nature of a course like this, and not just a Masterpieces of World Lit, but kind of a literature course generally. And one of the things we've stressed throughout, maybe particular to the World Lit course, is of course the multicultural and almost trans-historical dimension that we get into. I mean, as some people have noted in their final essays and in their final discussion board posts, there's just so much stuff to read. You know, where do you even start? So, if nothing else, one of the good things that comes out of a class like this and other literature classes that you could take, even if they're more narrowly focused, is that you're able to move through a body of work, it's like a collection of readings, in a kind of guided way, which is my job, but also with other classmates. And it's kind of amazing how the way we think about reading and our interaction with the book, we think of it in such solitary and individual terms. I don't think we really consider reading to be a social act, at least not on the surface. But if you think about it, there's lots of interesting ways in which reading is a social act, even though it generally occurs with just you and a book or an e-reader these days interacting with that text. There's lots of ways in which new interactive media, even things that are ubiquitous like Facebook now, are making the act of both reading and writing, they almost become one, but that much more individual experience of reading through communication of that experience becomes a much more social act. And in fact, this brings us backwards historically to a time when in fact reading was much more social than it's been in the recent past. So it's a mistake to think of reading as this very limited individual experience, as if it's always been that way and we're just continuing the long tradition from thousands of years ago. In fact, the idea that reading is this very solitary activity is a fairly recent development. And one of my research interests has been, and continues to be, in what's called marginalia, or the annotations that people make, the sort of writing in the margins of books. Again, it's frowned upon now that people don't really like to write in their own books that they own, and of course you're not technically allowed to write in library books for obvious reasons. Although it is cool to think, if that were allowed, what kind of text could develop literally in the margins around the so-called, official text. If I were to check a book out, make comments in the margins, and then somebody else checks it out, so they're reading the original, but then my commentary, and then responding to both of those, and ad infinitum, you sort of run out of margin soon enough. But it's a fun thought experiment. Don't start writing in library books. That's not the point. So anyway, the possibility for reading being a social act is returning to us now, not as a new development, but as a kind of return to reading as this much more social enterprise that it used to be. The sharing of books was much more common for most of the history of writing and reading than it certainly is now, I think. Outside of maybe book groups, which I've never personally been part of for reasons more of time than anything else. But they're great social events, often focused less on the reading part than whatever wine was on sale at the store that day. But that's a separate issue as well. I think I'm kind of giddy at the end of semester. There's work to be done still, but the end of the end of the semester is near enough that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, to go back to the point, what we arrive to maybe at the end of this class is to reflect on the experience of reading these things, not just for yourself for the first time and being exposed to things that, again, you may never have run across if they weren't part of a required reading list, but doing that as a group. That's one of the dynamics of a literature class, again, regardless of really what the focus is, that's so great. And even online, that can happen if the class is set up that way, so there's interaction in the discussion boards, obviously, and the whole reason we do like the posting of the essays for most of the units, even though it might be simpler from a technical standpoint to just, do a document and email it to me or submit it. Of course, posting it on a discussion board allows it to be read by the entire class, or at least a few people in the class, who are then, forced to or required to respond. So the social element of reading really becomes one of the foremost things that we get to experience in this class, even though we don't spend a lot of time necessarily reflecting on it as it's happening. But it's one of the things that at the end of the term like this, I really like to draw people's attention to, because the impetus of our course on a weekly basis sort of kept you moving forward, and I got to read the next thing, and then I got to post the essay, and I have to read the other essays and post, remarks or comments on those. You get into that habit a little bit, but then when the term stops, we all have great intentions of, I'm going to reread things. Yeah, right. I'm going to read other things in the textbook. Yeah, right. Great intentions, but it's just hard to keep that momentum going. The one thing that can be fundamental in helping that is if we can sort of culturally bring back reading as this social experience. It's just something that has really left us. That's why I'm a little ambivalent about e-readers. They're practical on so many levels. I mean, not the least of which is you don't have to lug around a whole bunch of textbooks. But I'm not sure that they allow that kind of interaction that we could be interested in reinvigorating. Honestly, writing in the margins of books, I think, has become a lost art. And not because people just didn't want to do it, but for lots of other reasons. Again, the library ownership of books is a huge part of it. And just the idea that writing in a book was defacing it somehow. I don't know why that cultural imperative is with us in such strong terms. People just don't like to write in books anymore. But we get a taste of what that could be like in a course like this. So one of the things that I hope you can appreciate beyond all of the other aspects of the course that you're getting, maybe the content part, is just how fun it is. Again, that weird English professor fun way. To be part of a group of people having this experience of reading all of these interesting works together, even if you don't like all the works, just being able to share that dislike is sometimes a pleasurable experience in and of itself. So anyway, I hope you feel like you did get something out of the course from the content part, just being exposed to different cultures or kinds of readings that you never would have bumped into on your own, and that this does change maybe the way you seek out texts to read and your openness to a diversity of texts in the future. And then again, fundamentally, to reconsider how you think about reading and the act of reading, and how the sharing of that experience is just such a great part of life that is maybe going away, and we need to do our best to preserve it in whatever ways that we can. Anyway, if you have any concluding kind of questions or issues, be sure to be in touch. And like I said, I hope you've enjoyed the class, and maybe I'll see some of you virtually or physically in the future. Have a great holiday, and I'll talk to you soon.